Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night. My name is Ramin Nassehi. I'm a teaching fellow at the Department of Economics at UCL, and I would like to give you a taste of what it's like to study economics. Uh, this is how we're going to proceed in this taster session. I'm going to show you some charts and have a casual and relaxed discussion about globalization. So, uh, I believe in the last 4 decades, we've been living in an age of hyperglobalization. Now, what do I mean by that? Just pause and have a look around your room. Have a look at the objects you see. I see this iPhone, my shirt, eyeglasses, this laptop, this screen. Now, all of these things, I would argue, are the outcomes of globalization. What do I mean by that? It means that they've been produced internationally. Let's take the example of iPhone. The production of iPhone has been broken down to different stages and outsourced to different countries. For instance, South Korea would probably uh, produce the the South Korea would probably produce the computer chip for this. Uh, then Apple in California would produce the software. Then all the components would go to China. Someone would assemble these components together in China and then export the iPhone to Regent Street in London, and I will go and buy it from the Apple store. So this is the product of hyperglobalization. Another example is my shirt. The cotton of my shirt has been probably produced in India. Then that cotton has been exported to Bangladesh, turned into a cloth, and then that cloth has been exported to Vietnam, sewed together to this T-shirt, and that T-shirt has been exported to, again, London so that I can buy it. So almost all the things that I see around me are the products of globalization. And I challenge you to look around your room and try to find one product that has not been produced internationally, that has been produced within a national border. I challenge you. So now I talked about hyperglobalization, but let's look at the data. What's the indicator of economies becoming more globalized and trading with each other? One indicator is world trade, the growth in world trade. So let's look at the chart here. Yeah. Now this chart. This chart shows you the evolution of world trade, total amount of exports and imports that have been taking since 1980. So the world trade in 1980 is 100, let's assume is 100. And you see that in the past 5 decades, you had an explosive growth in world trade. Basically, world trade increased about more than fivefold. And all this happened within my lifetime. I was born in 1980s. So massive explosion in growth in economies becoming highly integrated. Now, a question to you. Why? What have been the main drivers of this growth in the past 5 decades? So this is the question I would like you to think of. What have been the main drivers behind the fast growth in trade since 1980s? And please write down the answers that comes to your mind in the chat. There are, of course, several factors, and we can discuss them. So I'm waiting for your answers. So the different factors that have contributed to the rise in world trade. So I haven't seen any answers yet. There are several factors, so I'll wait for a few more seconds. Can everyone hear me okay? Just to type some to make sure that everybody's seeing everything and hearing everything. Could you just leave a message so I know everything is going fine? Can everyone hear me? Very good, very good. Okay, I got the... Very good. Ease of communication. Ease in communication, very good. So let me hold the ease in communication. Hanush, yes? Then Davina, so first we had the ease of communication. Then Davina said lower tariffs. Very good. So Davina, again, increasing new technologies. What do you mean by technologies? Transportation technologies, communication technologies? Very good. Let's look at this comment again. Ease in transportation, container ships. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Very impressed, Anush. Very impressed. So Mark has said, one of the main advances I would highlight, apart from the new technologies, containerization. Also the ability of information to cross borders smoothly as capital investment. Very good so far. Very good. Impressed. I really like the specific answers like containerization. So I'll wait for a few more seconds. Very good. Anush, you mentioned ease in communication. Could you elaborate on that? How can the ease in communication help the world trade? So let's start with this. Obviously, I think the Anush and Mark mentioned, both of them, the rise of containers. Exactly. The rise of container box has been one of, yes, the rise of container box has been one of the main factors behind this explosive growth in trade. You know, whenever we see an image of globalization and the growth in trade, that we always see the image of these containers. Very good. And containers is a technological factor. This is very important. This is very important. What do I mean by technological factor? That means it was bottom up. The second factor that was mentioned, again by Davina, is lower tariff rates. Lower tariff rates. Now, what's the difference between lower tariff rates and container? Container is a technological advancement, is a bottom-up factor. But lower tariff rates is a political decision, a deliberate decision made by politicians to increase world trade. So this is a difference between containers and the lower tariff rates. Very good. But then we're missing another technological factor that someone talked about, again, Anush. Anush mentioned ease in communication, and I asked him or her to elaborate on this. So mentioned ease in communication leads to a rise in information available to the various global economies. You're getting very close. Getting very close. The example probably that comes to your mind about ease of communication is the internet. Now, how does internet increases the world trade? Let me go back to my iPhone example. As I mentioned to you, the production of iPhone has been broken down to different stages and outsourced into different countries. And as a company, Apple needs to coordinate all these production chains, needs to coordinate that, the computer chip is produced right at the right time in South Korea, and all the components go to China at the right time, and all the assemblies come back to London at the same time. And that coordination needs internet, going back to the ease of communication. So if I want to summarize, very good comments. If I want to summarize three main factors, would be, as I take a look at my slides here, is container box, a massive technological advancement, which was mentioned by Mark and Davina. And then the ease of communication, which I showed with Wi-Fi sign here. The internet allows the coordination between different branches. You cannot have global value chains. You cannot have global production chains without internet. And the third one, which is an open door, it's lower tariff rates. A deliberate decision made by politicians to increase trade. So combination of these things, as you all mentioned, we covered these three factors. Thank you, impressed, has led to a growth in world trade. But let me focus on one factor, this factor of lower tariff rates. And let me go to my next slide. My next slide, have a look at here. Underneath, it says a unilateral tariff reduction by developing countries. So the y-axis is the tariff rates. The x-axis is time. And these are different regions. And as you can see, all these regions, through time, unilaterally decide to reduce their trade. This is very important. What do I mean by unilaterally? That means that you on your own, the country on their own, decided to lower their tariff rates. Nobody forced it, right? Or there are no two-way negotiations. Countries said, no matter what the other countries are doing, whether they are holding their tariff barriers or not, whether they're opening their economies or not, we are opening up. We are reducing their tariff rates. Now, the second question that I want you to think about is this. Why have countries decided to unilaterally reduce their tariff rates? And I would be impressed if someone can answer this. Why have countries decided to unilaterally reduce their tariff rates? I'm waiting for your answer in the chat. Okay, very good. So this is what Anish has said. Reduced tariff rates lead to lower prices of raw materials for producers, which leads to a rise in supply of goods and services, leading to a rise in aggregate supply. Very good. Very good. Very good, Anish. I'll wait for the others to come up with their answers. Very good. But Anish, let me get back to you while others are answering. So the logic of your argument is good, but why all these things started to happen after 1980, not before that? Why the tariff reduction happened after 1980? Anyone would like to have an attempt? Just had one attempt so far? I'll wait for a few more seconds and I'll continue. Increase, very good. So Davina says increase foreign investment after colonization. Good. Mark, would you like to have a go as well? I'll wait for a few more seconds. Cold War, after 1980, you need to elaborate. So yes, correct. Cold War ended 1989. But you see, how does that lead to a reduction in tariff rates, a unilateral tariff rates? Closest, I think the closest answer is Anush's answer. So think about Anush's answer. Here's his or her answer. It's the closest. We need one more step to complement that. Very good. Very good, Davina. So they had no tariff autonomy. Getting very close. Getting very close. So let's go back to the example of iPhone. Let me give you an example. So you all got very close and Anush got closest. Let's go through his comment one more time. Reduced tariff rates lead to lower prices of raw materials for producers, which hence leads to a rise in supply of goods and services, leading to a rise in aggregate supply. Very good. I think you spot a very good and important thing. When we are talking about tariff rates, we're not just talking about tariff rates for the finished goods. These tariff rates also include the intermediate and raw goods. Now, let's again go back to my favorite example of iPhone. Let's say you're China and you want to get an integrated, you want to become part of the world trade. You want to become a partner from Apple and assemble these components together. What's the first step? In other words, if you want to become part of the global production chain, part of this global supply chain, the first step is that you have to open up your economies so that all these raw materials and components come in. So China needs to open up its economy so the components of an iPhone can easily come in. They assemble the components together and export it. So exactly. Because of all these technological advancements, you had the rise in global production change. And the rise in global production change further encouraged countries to become part of it. And to become part of it, they had to unilaterally reduce their tariff rates in order to get into this game. Very good. Very good. Anish, very impressed. Impressed by the others. So there was the combination of, I would say, trade autonomy, tariff autonomy, technological advancements, and most importantly, the rise of global production change. Very good. Thank you. Now, let me end with my final point. Let me go back to the next step and talk about Let me remove these comments. Sorry, just bear with me. Let me remove this. And also remove my question. So blank state, all good. Very good. Now, so far we talked about the rise in production change, the rise in world trade, the globalization of production of almost everything we see. That's we talked about. But now let's look at the distributional implications. Who were the main losers and the winners of this change since my lifetime? So who were the main losers and winners of globalization? I introduce 5 characters. Let me go away so that you can fully see my screen. Who is my first character? My first character is a farmer in Kenya. My second character is a low-skilled worker in China. Assembly probably did the iPhones for us. The third character is the high-skilled worker in India. Fourth character, low-skilled worker in the US. The fifth one, high-skilled worker in the US. Now, here's the question. Who has been the main winner? You need to choose one actor among these. The main winner of globalization. And what do I mean by being the main winner is that you experience the highest rate of growth in your income. Again, let me repeat. You experience the highest rate of growth in your income. So let's go back to the chat. I want you to write down the main winner of globalization. Very good. So we had high skilled in the US. Oh, Marcus, yes, let me start. Yeah, very good. So we start with, again, so Marcus says United States. Oh, sorry, I think yeah. So losers is Europe and the United States, those who indeed designed the global trade regimes. Mark, but you need to be specific. Who within them, the high skilled or the low skilled? So the main winners, Davina thinks, is the high skilled in the US. Okay. Anush again. Oh, high skilled in India. Very good. Mark, winner, low skill in China. Very good. So let's start with. So the winners is mixed. You mentioned, first of all, you all mentioned high skilled in the US, high skilled in India, and low skilled in China. So you mentioned again high skilled in the US, high skilled in India, and low skilled in China. Can I ask you to write down the losers now? I'll get to the answer in a minute. The losers. Who are the main losers? Thank you, Maria. Maria gave a good answer for the winners. I am waiting for you to pick the losers. Okay. I'll reveal the answers in a minute. I'm just waiting for you to select the losers. Okay, let me start by the winners. Answer, tada. Those are the main two winners. High skilled worker in India, which was mentioned, and low skilled worker in China as well. Very good. These two, part of the global distribution, have been the main winners of globalization. And the losers, which probably you guessed, they're quite easy, is the low skilled worker in the US and farmer in Kenya. So I would say, yes, most of you spot the losers easily. Now, let's look at the famous chart, the elephant chart, that captures all this, the main winners and the losers. If you want to put the characters there. Now, before that, let me clarify the x-axis and the y-axis. This is very important. The y-axis is the cumulative increase in your real income. All of it, right? The absolute increase in your income in since 1980s. And what's the X distribution? Your place in the global income distribution. For instance, if you're a farmer in Kenya, you were poor to start with, among the lowest in terms of the low tail of global income distribution. And your income since 1980s, by the time that I was born, didn't increase that much. We're talking about the tail, the farmer. Who had the highest increase? The people who were in the middle of a distribution. Are basically the global middle class, which tend to reside mainly in China and India, the global middle class and the upper class. They experienced about 80% increase in their income since 1980. And the high skilled worker experienced an increase in their income, but not as large as the others. Why? because the other workers, the low-skilled worker in China and the high-skilled worker in India, they're starting from a low base. Their income was low to begin with. So therefore, they experienced the fastest rate of growth. They experienced their income doubled from 100 pounds per year to 200 to 300. We didn't experience that much of growth in the high-skilled workers because they're already starting from a high base. Very good. And if you want to see basically the main, the drivers behind many of these political events that we are experiencing now, the rise of populism, it's got to do with these people here. The middle class in rich countries, if you want to put them in the global income distribution, they're among the richest 20% in the world. The richest 20% in the world. So I would put the low-skilled worker in the US, let's say in Detroit, the person who used to assemble cars in Detroit, but now lost his or her job to the Chinese worker here in point B. And they almost had, zero growth in their wages in the past 3 or 4 decades. They have experienced no growth at all. And many of economists believe that this created an environment for a backlash against globalization. But the main winners, let me just end with the positive side, are these people in the middle of our distribution. Since 1980, 1 billion people have come out of poverty because of joining the global value chain, because of producing iPhones, because of these shirts. This is the largest reduction in poverty in human history. 1 billion people. Let me give you an idea about 1 billion people. So if we translate it into daily, something much more intuitive, it becomes 50,000 people getting out of poverty every day. I repeat that, 50,000 people getting out of poverty every day. That's a half of Wembley Stadium. So every day that I wake up in London and, go to have a taster session, 50,000 people get out of poverty. So this is a massive achievement. But on the other side, the losing side is the middle class in rich countries, a story that most of us are familiar with. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. I hope you enjoyed this taster session. This is a flavor that I talk about in my first year course, The World Economy. So I talk about globalization. This session, I just talked about trade, but in my course, I talk about financial globalization as well. What were the main drivers of globalization and who were the main winners and losers of globalization? The distributional implications of globalization. Thank you so much for your participation. I hope I'll see you soon in my class. Thank you. Take care.